Hey all, this is Wes. Welcome to the show. I've been asked before why I sometimes will paint a red background in the underpainting in the early stages of a painting when it's ultimately going to be painted green. Why go through the trouble of painting all those areas red first? And it's hard to explain. The best thing I can come up with is if you think of other arts, like maybe you have a period piece, a historical movie. Why go to the trouble of having period undergarments, t-shirts? Why even worry about that when you're not going to see the t-shirts in the finished movie? Same kind of answer. It's the overall aesthetic. Some of it's hidden, but the actors know it's there. And perhaps in a scene, say a fight scene, maybe the camera catches under the cusp of a sleeve, and you can see the undershirt. If a viewer pauses the movie, he'll be able to see, oh, that's a period piece undershirt. Okay, terrible analogy, but it gets the point across. When I'm painting a landscape, and I start with a red field, only to paint back over it with green, I'm choosing to paint an underpainting with the complementary color of what it'll eventually be, because sometimes I don't cover the whole canvas and you'll see bits of that red poking through. Sometimes I will cover it, but as it's being painted, the contrast between the green and the red is there for me to see as I'm painting. And that affects the way I paint and the choices I make leading up to the final painting. So all that kind of ties in a kind of a shorthand. The way I think of it is that's the history of the painting. So like maybe if we try a different art form, maybe writing. If you're writing a novel, I'm a science fiction fan. One of my favorites is the Dune series by Frank Herbert. And in it, he has lots of excerpts from supposedly historical works, non-fiction works, that are put in as in between chapters, footnotes here and there. But all of that is really made up history. It's not real history. He's created these historians and gave them things to write. What does that have to do with the overall story? It serves as a supporting role. It's sort of an immersive element. So too, in the painting process, when I add little bits of color or drip some paints, I'll end up covering over some of that, and some of it I'll leave. But all of it in the end is in an effort to create that history, to give it some other interest rather than just a plain green field of grass. None of what I've just said has anything to do with the painting I'm painting now, although it has a lot to do with it. I actually started this one off by writing a few words on the canvas. At the bottom I had written compost, and then new growth, hope, and bloom at the top. From the very beginning, I had in mind of doing another one of my Mad Symphony paintings. I think this may be the 6th in that series that I've painted. All of them are abstract landscapes with abstracted flowers of some sort or another growing. I think this is the first one that I've done vertically. The others have all been horizontal paintings. I've never written words to begin the painting. I just thought I would try it and see how it turned out, and I had no preconceived ideas of whether those words would remain to the end or not. I did end up, I don't think you can really tell they're there, but they are part of the history of the painting, and you can get glimpses of letters. And it may be only enough to where you have a question in your mind of, is that supposed to be a letter? Is that supposed to be a word? That's kind of all part of the history aspect that I was talking about. I think anything that you do to get to the place where you want the painting to be is fair game, really. Part of me, when someone asks why, I do this underpainting a certain way, or why I've made certain choices, a lot of it really is just experimenting. I enjoy experimenting with color and texture and these different elements of painting to challenge myself and to expand my painting vocabulary, if you will. And much of the time it doesn't work. A lot of times I end up painting back over the thing that I started with. But that too is just part of the process. If I hadn't have tried a certain thing that I ended up painting over, then I wouldn't know that thing doesn't work until I try it. At this point in the painting process, I think I was starting to really get a good feeling for the painting. I was really liking what I was seeing. With this series, it started off with a love for the painter Stuart Davis, an American painter. I don't remember the details of his life, but I've always liked his paintings. Search for him online, Stuart Davis. He did a lot of these abstracted paintings that it's been compared to jazz music, very much like this painting I'm doing, with these abstracted shapes and colors. black lines. A lot of rhythm involved. Rhythm meaning duplicated shapes, that sort of thing. Like on the left side, you see the almost ladder-like rungs going up. Kind of all along, it's almost a nonsensical grid over the whole canvas with these skewed lines of black. So this painting series is all about rhythm, bright, playful colors, the black lines throughout, and balancing out the colors. That's another question I get a lot, is about how to deal with colors and how to balance colors. Part of that comes with trying things out. I definitely did a lot of trying things out on this painting. In fact, these greens I'm adding now, yellow green, the first round, once I got them all down on the canvas, I didn't like it really, and ended up changing the color a bit, and it turns out a little better after I do that. But this lime green is it doesn't match very well with the blue and red. But I don't know that until after I try it. I'm adding more at the bottom because I don't know if maybe it just needs to be more balanced, or if it doesn't work. So I kind of, in those situations, I try it out and let it dry, come back to it later, reassess it, and paint over it if I need to, or alter it in some way. Also, in adding all the reds along those lines, especially that top horizontal line, I wasn't totally happy with it. But as I recall, I had to kind of let it dry and reassess it later to really be sure. Looking at it now, it's not so bad. I kind of like the red, but I think in my mind I was thinking that needs to kind of be more of a far distant hill in the landscape, and so I didn't want it to be red. Red seems to be more of a foreground element. Usually distant hills end up fading away slightly. I'll end up painting back over it in black later on here. So yeah, color balance, when you're doing the sort of painting I'm doing, which is adding a lot of various colors and blotches of paint, you really can't go wrong with every time you add a color, adding it elsewhere on the canvas, and trying not to line things up too much unless you want that look on purpose. Like take the white flowers for instance. If you look on the verticals and horizontals, none of those whites line up with each other, if that makes sense. And that's just to make it look a little more random, a little more natural. Some of that comes with practice, and it's not a firm rule by any means. If the painting looks fine with things lining up, then go with it. And it probably seems funny talking about something seeming natural when you're looking at this painting. It's not exactly a natural painting. But I think the idea is because the colors are so unnatural and artificial, and because the shapes and the distorted nature of the flowers are so unnatural and artificial, I need to have other elements that are more natural to make it a landscape, perhaps. We're most of the way through the painting now. I'm focused mostly on solidifying lines. Any lines that look like they're just weak and not intentional, I try to either paint back over them or firm them up, especially the black lines. And any, these squares of color, I want them to be bold and show up. Also notice those stems, those major stems coming down from the flowers. I noticed there were 4 that I changed to red stems at the bottom. I think those look cool like that. They kind of spread out nicely on the canvas. trying out some blue for the lines back there. I think I end up painting over those as well. Again, experimenting, trying things out, keeping what works, and changing what doesn't. That's pretty much my whole deal, I think. I'm pretty practical when it comes to painting, I think. You'll see me in this one a lot, stepping back, tilting my head back and forth. Of course, it's sped up, so it looks a little more dramatic than it was, and I'll also hold my hands up. I'm not keeping glare out of my eyes. I've noticed I do this subconsciously to kind of focus my eye to the painting. I'll hold both hands up, kind of like blinders on a horse in the old days. It kind of blocks out things in my periphery, so I'm kind of more focused on the painting. I don't know, it helps me assess the painting a little better. Adding little smaller bits of color here and there, almost accent colors, just to make the thing dance a bit with life. Even in my, if you will, more normal paintings, I try not to have too many areas of paint where there's only one shade of one hue. I try to break that up either in texture or with different colors, or slightly different tints or shades of the same color, simply because it's a quick way to make sure that your painting stays interesting. Kind of as part of my practical painting approach, I have these heuristics. Heuristic, if you don't know, is just a kind of a model in your mind on what to do next to get to a desired outcome. So like in chess, the game of chess, one heuristic would be to control the center of the board. Like that's just an axiom, a guideline that tends to be a good thing to do. So that's a heuristic. So in my painting process, I tend to have these little heuristics that I stand by. Not all of them are probably necessary. In fact, I can think of paintings that I've seen from other artists where they absolutely disregard some of my heuristics, and those paintings are great. Paintings where they have broad swaths of the painting in one flat color, but the painting still works and looks great. So, again, that's not really a rule. It's just a heuristic that seems to work for me in changing up colors. Usually not to this degree. This is very chaotic, but it also kind of fits this series. I like how this one turned out. It's a lot like the other Mad Symphony series paintings, but this one's got some unique qualities that I like, and hope you've liked it too. Until next time, remember, I don't have a closing catchphrase. Bye!